Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we got something special planned for you tonight, and I'll tell you how it started. It started with an email at rick@floridasportsman.com. Somebody wanted me to interview somebody that knows a lot more than I do about hatcheries and how hatcheries could possibly play a role in restocking certain game fish we need help with. Well, that really rang true with me. My buddy Scott Myers got his graduate degree at the Rosenthal School at the University of Miami, and his project was raising red snapper and releasing them in the Gulf. This goes back quite a ways, and red snapper really were in trouble when they did it. But they're doing more species than just red snapper. They can do cobia. They can do mahi. They're working on grouper. They got a lot of fish. Could that be the answer to replenishing some of our native stocks? We'll find out from Scott Myers. And then we'll take our trip down the East Coast, up the West Coast, out the Panhandle, and find out what's going on. I'll be surprised if everybody's not in a great mood as spring busts wide open with all of its great fishing action. Hey, the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, okay? By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats, you want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore, you want to check out youngboats.com. And, of course, Castaway Hat Company. They got a hat for every adventure. It's a hat that makes a difference. Now it's time for us to talk with Scott Myers about cobia and what could be the future of helping replenish the stock. Hey, I got to tell you, it's a big thrill for me. This boy's dad has been a friend of mine for, 30 years, I guess, since we all started fishing together. And his son grew up to be a wildlife biologist specializing in marine fisheries. And, of course, a great place to do that is at the Rosenthal School at the University of Miami. It is indeed mine and Florida Sportsman's pleasure to welcome Scott Myers. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing good, Captain. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. I sure am. I got to tell you, our mutual friend, Roger Walker, brought it up on the radio show that we've done for Florida Sportsman Forever one day, and he said, I got to tell you, I think we can help restock the ocean with cobia, because our cobia numbers, they're really not very good, and they haven't been good for a while. I thought he was nuts. And he said, well, you need to call Scott Myers because he knows more about it than anybody. And I got to tell you, I'm not sure he was nuts. You guys have had some amazing results with cobia, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. Down at the University of Miami, they've kind of pioneered the breeding and reproduction technology. Hatchery technology would be the all-encompassing thing. And they're the best, in the world at producing cobia. They've got their brood stock, which they capture in the wild, and they're able to raise off just in about a month. Just over a month, about 100,000 fingerlings that would be 1 gram and about 30 days old.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And they do a great job.
I'm sorry. I just feel so bad. I hate to cut you off, but us ignorant fishermen don't know how big a gram is. Okay, how long is a gram cobia?
Yeah, I mean a 1 gram cobia is going to be about an inch, essentially.
Okay.
I actually, I did a long amount of research with my partner Steve Sutton back at the university on stock enhancement with a focus on red snapper, and then I know that we had spoken. I had followed up with the director of aquaculture, Dr. Daniel Benetti, earlier today just to kind of confirm a few things and get some of his input. And really what he thinks would be the most successful place to start would be a 3 gram fish. So that would be about 3 grams, 3 inches, and about 45 days old, because that'll be kind of a full-fledged juvenile cobia, where it feels like we'd have a lot higher survivability, going an extra 15 days before stocking them in the wild.
Okay, so what you guys are thinking is 3 inches, the cobia would have, correct me if I'm wrong, he'd have hopefully the instincts that would help keep him alive in a very nasty ocean, but yet he'd be healthy enough to where you could let him go and he may have a decent chance at survival.
That's right. So I would imagine the real goal, I mean, the survival of a cobia, as an egg, the fish are all spawning. I mean, you're talking decimals of a percent.
Right.
But kind of every day, and every month, and as the size of the fish continues to progress, those kind of become whole numbers. And eventually, we think that it's hard to tell. You're going to have to go and measure the success and see what would happen. But somewhere in the order of, 10 to 20% you might have survived, which is actually a huge number based on, what you're starting with.
That's a tremendous number. I was hoping for a possibility of 5%. Okay, now how many cobia can the University of Miami raise in a year?
Well, part of it has to do with that we actually, in captivity, they're spawning naturally. Now, we'll control things like water temperature, and then we use things like shade cloth, but also we rely on like the actual lunar cycle, which, happens to help with their spawning events. So, in the wild from, Key West to Virginia, you've got cobia spawning from April through about September. They like to be in water like 68 degrees to 75, 78 degrees. And so that kind of shortens your seasonality a little bit. But half the year, let's say, the spring into the early fall, you could be producing 100,000 fish, per month. But that would be a stretch. And the ways to increase that would be more larval rearing tanks and, more inputs, right? So with as they are today, they're producing, between 50 and 100,000 fish per batch, and that's accomplished in, 5 weeks.
So almost 100,000 a month.
Yeah.
In best case scenario. Okay, now
yes, that's correct.
What are they doing with the cobia that they're raising now?
Yeah, right now it's 100% a partnership with Sea Farm, Open Blue Sea Farms, and when I worked for the university back in 2012, 2013, that was one of my jobs, was producing cobia to ship down to Panama, where they're raising them out in pens and then eventually shipping them back to the food market as fillets, whole gutted fish, other products like that. And one of the things I did a lot was raising their live food. So we actually feed them live food during the rearing phase. Because I know you had mentioned, are they going to be equipped to go and survive in the wild? So they're already used to, and their instinct is to prey on those small organisms that are out there that they'd be feeding on naturally. So they're already kind of seeing movement and then going and eating that thing. And we actually focus on weaning them off the dry food to get them onto the pellet, because that's what they're going to be fed on the farm. Whereas if we were going to produce, for restocking stock enhancement, we probably would want to avoid the pellet and focus on just continued feeding on live feeds.
I'll be darned. Is it conceivable that you could do like a grass shrimp? You could do something that of tiny size that a 3-inch cobia could actually feed off of.
Oh, of course. So what I actually did was they start them on what's called a rotifer, which is a really, really small organism, but we call them bioencapsulators. So we'd actually mix into the tank where we're raising these smaller organisms all the different nutrients we want to give to the cobia, and then those organisms would then take up those nutrients, and when the cobia eats the rotifer, then it's getting all the nutrition that we're wanting it to have. I would actually focus on the Artemia production, which are brine shrimp, or you might have bought them as a kid, called sea monkeys.
Sure.
And we use those as a way to create live feeds for the fish as they get a little bit bigger. We work them from rotifers onto the Artemia, and eventually onto pelletized foods. But I'd imagine, if you were to carry them, further along, you could just work your way up with larger bioencapsulating organisms to feed them until they're out in the wild. But overall, I mean, this is already done. The hatchery technology is there. Everything's there. They do it in salmon. They do it in trout. It's doubtful that many trout in the wild are actually wild. They're probably all genetically tied back to the stocking efforts, of the United States government over the last 100 years. So the technology's there. It's being done already. It's just a matter of adding a new species to the effort. if Cobia is kind of what we want to try to focus on, the hard part's over. The University of Miami's got the protocols and the ability to produce, the fish to restock. And then it's just going to become a matter of being able to measure that success, get everyone's buy-in, from the government to, all the stakeholders, and make sure that, it's got legs. It's going to take, a cobia is not going to be mature until the age of 3. But, if we are able to enhance the stock, we do know, that these fish will continue to breed in captivity, more likely in the wild. So, everyone we get to the age of 3 years old, you're enhancing the breeding stock as well.
Okay. So your contacts at Miami, and from your own research, you would recommend releasing them when they are 3 inches long. Is that right?
That's just a jumping off point, because that's kind of the thing is, since it hasn't been done, we think that you'd have much better survivability at a 3-inch fish, 5 days old, over, 1-inch fish. We typically produce the 1-inch fish so we can ship them in water in an airplane to Panama. So we're wanting to cut our costs, and make sure there's enough oxygen so that smaller fish are ready to ship. And they're also then going to be held in captivity once more. But we think that it's a good jumping off point, so you're not having to, raise the fish too long in captivity so that it gets too used to living, in those
Right.
lack of predators conditions.
Right.
But you'd have a much higher survival, I think, at a juvenile. So that's kind of a fact of the cobia at 45 days, kind of being a full-fledged juvenile.
Okay. So
more dynamic swimmer, be able to avoid predation a little bit better, things like that.
So 45 days, is a jumping off point. You're calling the optimum time to release them, right?
Yeah, and then I think that you'll hone in on what the reality is, right? So is it 45 days? Is it 60 days? That'll be all metrics that come back in, as we're able to measure success, which probably the best way that we can see would be, recreational fishermen, submitting a fin clipping, of any fish harvested, and then us using that D.O.A. to identify if it was part of the stock enhancement program and try to kind of measure the stock that way. And that's where you have to kind of collaborate with NOAA, collaborate with recreational fishermen, get all these stakeholders kind of on the same page. And we also see, for true success, you're going to have to kind of set up and have partnership hatcheries, throughout the range from Texas to Virginia would be the dream.
Sure.
Where the stock is being enhanced all the way along.
Do we know how long they live?
Oh, I'd imagine they're not as young. The live fast, die young fish is the dolphin, the mahi.
Right.
They've hardly ever caught one over 4 years old. The cobia doesn't become mature until about 3. And I'm sure those big ones, you get up there 60 pounds, they've got to be 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
I see. Okay. And real quick, and I so appreciate your time, Scott. This has been fascinating. Give me a ballpark. All right, I called the University of Miami tomorrow, and I said, look, I need a pet 3-inch cobia for my son. Please ship him up here. We're going to name him Ralphie. What's it cost to raise a 3-inch cobia?
$1, about $1.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Right around there. And I mean, I'd imagine that if we're going to, carry it to 45 days, and it depends on the scale and everything else. But yeah, right around $1. At the end of the day, your labor, your inputs, all those things. And it could be replicated, at around that point.
That is fantastic. That's fascinating. I'm headed to Ponte Vedra ground tomorrow. Can you send me 100? I know just where I want to let them all go. No, but in all seriousness, Scott, what species have you had that kind of success with? And please don't tell me that we need to raise more red snapper. But tell me what species you've had that kind of success with.
Oh, I mean, as far as stock enhancement, there hasn't been a proven, marine finfish stock enhancement, in the Gulf or the eastern seaboard states. However, all the success is being had, with salmon and releasing them. They go out into the marine environment, and they're seeing those same fish that they're, raising and hatcheries coming back up the river and reproducing year in and year out. So it's a matter of, you got to start somewhere. I think that a lot of fishermen, recreational fishermen, enjoy fishing for cobia. It's an accessible fishery, being that it's coastal, it's not way off in the Gulf Stream.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's a great opportunity. There is the red snapper. I actually was happy to hear some of the work we had done on some grant writing 10 years ago came to fruition, and they've developed technology for raising those red snapper. However, from what I hear and what I see, when we're allowed to go out off Northeast Florida,
Yeah.
there seems to be quite a lot, so
Right.
I think that the cobia would be a great idea. I think that the level of the technology for a marine recreational fin fish is at the highest, hatchery technology wise, understanding, how to raise these fish and produce them at scale. Nothing's quite as far along as the cobia.
Okay. Have you done mahi at all?
Yeah. One of the scientists down there, John Stieglitz, was there when I was down there, going on about a decade ago. And yeah, good success raising mahi. The focus there was for a variety of things, but one of the issues is in captivity. If you're going to raise them in a captive aquaculture environment, they're just very aggressive fish. So you're going to have a lot of violence in the tank, and then it'd be a matter of if you're raising a bunch of chickens for meat, and the chickens were all just as crazy as mahi are, which is why they're so fun to catch and fight on a hook and line. Because they're such an aggressive fish. But the cobia seem to commingle a little bit better. And so that's why there's more research and more work being done towards producing them.
I see.
Aquacultured species.
All right, last fish I'll ask you about. What about grouper? Can we do gag grouper?
Yeah. Over in China, they raise a huge amount of grouper species. A lot of the time, they're raising them to a small size. And what they're doing then is selling it as a live fish for the consumer. We had, I believe, at the University of Miami, some Nassau grouper, and they'd done some work there. There's a lot of good research on that species and that whole class of fish, and it would be possible. They're very slow growing, so your impact is going to be much slower, but the fact that they aggregate to structure is beneficial because they're going to be having habitat, where you're obviously going to be releasing them. However, you got a lot of red snapper down there on the reef, I guess. Could be an issue.
And there's nothing they'd like better than a fried grouper sandwich for lunch. Hey, Scott, this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate your input so much. I'm serious. Good gracious, you're telling me that the recreational fishermen of Florida couldn't raise $500,000 to release 500,000 cobia? Sounds good to me, particularly if I get to pick the spots where they put them all. I think that's a great idea. I can't thank you enough, buddy. Maybe we're looking into the future. Maybe we're looking into something that can help us down the road. Scott, I can't thank you enough. Keep up the good work, and let's stay in touch, okay?
All right. You have a great day.
Scott Myers from the University of Miami. Back in the day, worked hard on their project, has continued to follow the research. It's gone very well. Well, let's get our trip started around the state tonight, and it wouldn't be the same if we didn't start it in Paradise. Time to touch down in Paradise and check in with one Craig Sutton. Craigie, can you loan me $10?
If I had it, I would.
God, dang it. All right. If you get it, call me. I just talked to this biologist. We can raise cobia in captivity for $1 a piece. All right, I'm gonna take 10 down to the scaffolding at Ponte Vedra ground, and we'll be all set for a while. Between the two of us, the two of us will have 20 cobia there we can go catch.
Perfect.
Tell me what's going on in Nosara. I am finally seeing a bunch of sailfish pictures.
Well, the marlins have been super good. They really have. Last Friday, we had a double blues, sailfish, yellowfin tuna. Then the day before, we had another marlin, missed a couple of them. It's just been a real good marlin bite. But what's happening, and I was kind of worried the last couple months down there because I wasn't seeing many. And when I was down there, we didn't we didn't catch any. We raised 1 or 2 marlin, but we didn't get the hooks in them. But my guys are telling me that they're working over the porpoise pods. They catch a couple yellowfin, maybe 2 or 3 of the nice Dorado, and then they'll start catching sailfish, and they'll raise 2 or 3 or 4, and they'll release 2 or 3 in a row, and then they shut down. And then 20 minutes later, the marlin start feeding, and they'll raise 2 or 3 marlin, they'll release 1, and then, it's like the sailfish, the marlin come into the area, sailfish back off. So I think there's more sailfish down there than we're actually catching. Just the marlin are kind of taking over the fight, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah,
inshore was really good. We caught some real nice grouper. They call it Cobia, and caught several nice one of those. We caught some Cobia fish.
That's outstanding.
It's a charter boat operator's dream right now, brother.
It sounds like your time is here, and it sounds like you're just as happy to welcome springtime in as those of us in Northeast Florida. Craigie, we can't thank you enough. Tell me how people get a hold of you if they want to go to Nosara.
They call me 904-591-2161, or they can send me an email, craig@fishingnosara.com.
Craig@fishingnosara.com. Thank you, brother. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Captain Craig Sutton giving us the news where the marlin are chewing. Our thanks to Craig Sutton for a great Costa Rica report. Hey, here's what we got to do on the East Coast. We had a great time talking with Scott Myers about raising cobia, but that went a little long, so we're going to run on down the East Coast and find out what's happening in South Florida by checking with the mayor of South Beach, one Alan Sherman. Alan, are you with us?
I am, Rick. How are you?
Alan, will you loan me $10?
How about 15?
15 work, okay?
There you go.
We're buying cobia. And
okay.
and $1 buys a 3-inch cobia. So I'm gonna go let
$1.
Yep, I'm gonna go let 15 of them go, and someday I'll tell you where I'll let them go, but not until I've caught at least a dozen.
Okay, I'm having a hard time following that, but you can still borrow 15.
Okay, buddy,
right.
You got a deal. Now, University of Miami is raising cobia, and
right,
and
that
right,
I knew,
and they're shipping them to Panama where they raise them in pens.
Okay.
And I'm like, wait a minute. They don't need to go there. I'll tell them
yeah, really.
Put me in charge. I know just where I want to put them.
Well, I think they end up at Costco, don't they?
I think they do too.
Yeah.
They take the long way to get there, though. Tell me about your fishing, Alan.
Well, we don't have a lot of cobias here. There are a few starting to show up, but not in real big numbers yet. Maybe in the next few weeks we'll see that happen. The weather's gorgeous. I mean, there's hardly a cloud around. It's as beautiful as you can get it. And there are some fish offshore to be caught. So on the piers, they're still catching a few mackerel, a few bluefish. When the water gets dirty, when the big winds come, there's been some pompano in the surf. And then offshore, there's been blackfin tunas to 20 pounds. Very few kingfish, which is kind of unusual for March, but hopefully we'll see them show up any day. And then there's been the normal, the bonitas, the barracudas, the sharks, and a bit more sailfish than they were catching.
Good.
So now the guys are starting to see multiple catches every trip, almost every trip. I won't say every guy's getting them, but the people out there with the kites and the live goggle eyes have been doing pretty good on the sailfish. There was a report. I'm not sure if it's how true it was because I didn't hear it firsthand, but it's been on Facebook and through some emails of school of bluefins and yellowfin tunas that passed through Miami this past week when the winds were blowing hard out of the east. And the guys said that they were like schools of 30 or 40 yellowfins.
Wow.
And small groups of oversized, the big bluefins. And that's, hopefully that happened. We get some big winds in the next week or two, and that might happen again. Every year, this time of the year, in the spring, the guys in the charter boats and the center consoles, they'll hook up on some fish that, they're targeting the sailfish or blackfin tunas, and a great big crater will open up in the water and just about dump the reels that they're trying to catch the sailfish on. But
and the next thing
that happens every year.
The next thing the charter says is, Captain, I don't have any string on my reel anymore.
Well, the crews are pretty quick to react. They don't want to lose all that line.
Yeah.
And just before they start to see metal on the spool, they clamp down and break them off. They're just too fast and too big,
sure.
to handle
Sure.
on that tackle. But
Sure.
It does happen every year. Of course, now, if you get the tuna rod out, the bluefin tuna rod out, you're not going to be the one that sees them.
Right. And people need to understand. And if you're a novice and you're listening to this, you're thinking, well, why on earth don't they fish heavy tackle this time of year?
Yeah,
well, because they
exactly.
want to enjoy sailfish and dolphin and the stuff that's a lot more regular to catch, a lot more, happens a lot more frequently. Bluefin tuna, even though they do come through this time of year, it's never, or unfortunately, it's probably never. We hope someday it could be, but it's not going to be a staple of your fishery. We're not going to see the tuna.com fishing down there anytime soon.
Exactly. No. So other than that, we've had a really good freshwater fight going on. Peacock bass just seem to be loaded in all the canal systems, the local canals, the canals in the glades, and now the largemouth bass are mixing in with them. I actually got to fish with a buddy the other day in the glades. We went out at probably 1:30. We were going to quit at 5:30 and had already caught 60 or 70 fish between the two of us, all on surface lures.
Wow.
And at 5:30, as the sun was starting to, get down a little bit, the fish just went nuts. I mean, they were going nuts before. I was ready to go home. My arms were hurting. And the guy says, look at them. They're just popping all over the surface. We can't leave with a bite like this. And we didn't quit fishing until 7. So that was a pretty good fishing fight we were involved in. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah. All right, real quick, before you go, what's your surface lure?
Well, I was using a lure called a mud minnow made by Savage Gear.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a Zero Spook.
Yeah.
It does the same thing. It's walk the dog. And my buddy was using some lure. It looked like a frog, but it was plastic with a prop on the back. I don't know what the name of it was, but they were just annihilating that lure.
That's cool. Alan, can't thank you enough, buddy. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Look forward to it, Rick.
All right, Captain Alan Sherman.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Alan Sherman for a great Miami Beach report. Now, we're going to head out west. We're going to make a stop in 10,000 Islands and check in with Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. No complaints here.
Good. Boy, springtime, isn't it?
It is. It's getting right. real quick.
Love it. Every day is better. I'm feeling a little under weather tomorrow. I don't think you're going to be able to get me on my office phone. Steve,
You got it.
tell me what's going on with your fishing.
We're doing pretty good. Obviously, this is the height of, our tourist season. So boat pressure is everything right now. So avoid, we got all this land, probably more so than most regions in Florida, but, or all this, playground to play with, I should say. And, it's still a little bit of a challenge, to get away from the crowds. There's a lot of communal spots and, things that avail. And, March is typically that month, right up until Easter, where boat traffic is going to be a premium, both with charter boat captains and certainly recreational boat traffic. And, it can be a little frustrating at times, but there's enough water to obviously share. But it also opens up huge opportunities if you're kind of savvy and know maybe even a little bit adventurous. You want to make a little bit of a run. The stuff down around, Chokoloskee area south, if you will, or, southeast, I should say, that stuff's doing extremely well. And a lot of the recreational traffic launching out of Marco Island and Goodwin will probably not get down that far. It's a bit of a commute and a little bit uncharted territory for a lot of guys. So the fishing pressure goes way down once you start getting actually into the park, Everglades National Park. And, that marker, if you will, is kind of the Camp Lulu area. So anything, I would even say south of that is, which is a little bit more closer than Chokoloskee. But anything a little bit past Camp Blue, it starts opening up a little bit. You got a lot more room to play. The water's cleaner. Everything's just a little bit better this time of year. So that's a good rule of thumb. So if you're trailering down, definitely try to launch, a little bit more south or southeast. So.
Okay. What's the fishery? What are you catching down there now?
So the snook and the reds are just loving this, I call it Chamber of Commerce weather. It just can't get any better than some of this stuff. And albeit a little bit windy, the winds are going to lay down for everybody going out on the weekend, so that's good. But the reality is snook, reds, even the trout with the water temperature climbing for whatever reason are cooperating. So the big three, the big backcountry three, and then certainly the tarpon are, showing up. And it's getting better by the day. We're getting waves of fish. I think we're still, probably not even halfway through that first wave that usually comes through that's very cooperative. So we're jumping fish daily if folks want to do that. And the bite, we haven't had much cloud cover, so an early morning rise, almost a pre-dawn launch is, absolutely key. And that bite's lasting probably about 2 hours or so. There's a couple different spots we're getting them. We're getting them a little bit offshore, a couple miles from shore. They're doing really well out that way, and not a lot of people fish for them that far from shore. Look for about 25, 35 feet of water, right in that range, and you're going to find them. And they're rolling pretty good at first light. So
big
keep
fish.
That in mind. And yeah, big fish. I mean, we're looking at, easily, everybody always wants to put their measurements on, their best guesses on tarpon, and reality is not a lot of them obviously hit the scale.
Right,
So,
right.
These fish are definitely triple digit fish, well 100. I think I haven't seen any giant 150 pound plus fish, but there's a lot of fish in that I would say 80 to 110 pound range. Somewhere in there, which is plenty for me. I can tell you that.
I gotta tell you something funny. I spent 11 years as a very young man as a tarpon guide.
Yeah.
And we weighed our fish. I'm sorry. I wish we hadn't. Obviously, I really wish we hadn't.
Sign of the times. Yeah.
If it was your first tarpon and you wanted to take it in for a picture and weigh it, we'd let you do it. Well, isn't it funny? Those tarpon have been coming up and down the East Coast of the United States for centuries, obviously.
Sure.
And we started taking a few of them, and we weighed them, and they weighed from 70 to 130 pounds. I think I got my biggest one ever is like 137. My buddy hit 153. I lost one that might have been 150 one day. And we're talking about hundreds of tarpon now, Steve, between the two of us over this 11-year period. And the guys that go out now, You talk to them, did you get any big ones? Nah, we had one that might have hit 200, but most of them were just little runts. You know, and wait a minute. You know?
I'm with you. I have never seen a 200-pound glass tarpon live. I have a very good buddy who I've seen reputable pictures from who had like a 190.
Woo!
And the thing just looks like it's from a different planet.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And they're just an entirely different breed of fish, it seems like. And there's nothing wrong with, people tend to overstate.
Sure.
Poundage on those. But,
yeah. Well, nobody's going to prove them wrong because nobody's going to kill one to find out.
Well, that's it. That's it.
And
The
that's
big
a good
fish.
thing.
That's all I go.
Yeah, it's exactly how big he was. Yep.
He was big.
We in our years of blue marlin fishing, we caught one true giant. You know how big she was, Steve?
What's that?
She was the biggest one I ever saw.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that. That's the biggest one I ever saw.
There you go. That adds to the lore for sure.
That's for sure. All right, brother. We appreciate you as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yeah, if I'm not too sore from catching tarpon, I'll be on the phone.
I hope you are. Talk to you next week, Steve. All right, we're going to move up to Greg Stamper, but before we do, let's hear a word from Castaway Hat Company. Hey, I'll bet you don't even remember the days that all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being burnt was cool. And even if you weren't a surfing god, oh man, you sure looked the part. Oh, have a lot of us paid the price for our vanity. We never knew the skin problems and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the option of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of. Thanks in no small part to Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the underside of the brims you ever saw. You may think your Bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough sun protection from sun damage. Do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. That's because every Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Company's going to pay to have 1 pound of trash removed from our waterways. The burning Florida sun won't be roasting your skin, and believe me, when you age a few years, you'll thank us old guys with a lifetime on the water. So go to CastawayHatCompany.com and get your best sun protection today. Our thanks to Steve Dahl for a great report from 10,000 Islands where he is sore from fighting tarpon. Now we're going to head up the coast a little way and check in with one Greg Stamper. You see any tarpon up there, Greg?
Yeah. Today, actually, we got into a couple here and there. They're just making their way into southwest Florida in my neck of the woods, but I'm pretty sure that over the next week or two, it's going to be full speed for, I don't know, let's say from now until, not very long, Rick. Only until like maybe November.
I like that. I like that. Even though you may well soon get sick of seeing those big silver devils, you're not yet, are you?
Well, honestly, I do the big ones when people ask.
Yep.
But I'm more into those juveniles, and that'll happen in about another month and a half. Haven't put really any legwork into it because it's been so busy. Now, I can tell you one thing, Rick, and I'm sure this is going to be a shock to you, but it's been very windy?
No. Where could it have come from?
I know. It's been really weird, right?
Yeah.
So the water is definitely mucked up, and it's kind of a weird way everything translates because it's funny when the offshore guys fish on the wrecks and the reefs and catch permit because their boats are big enough to handle that, and they have a great time out there, and there's nobody else around. So they catch a bunch of them, which did happen this week several times. And then you see your back bay guy really tight to the beach trying to catch these tarpon that are moving in and these tower boats that should be 5, 6, 7 miles out. And they even sometimes when I'm in the back bay, there's a big boat with a tower in it sitting in, a foot and a half of water trying to catch trout. So I'm like, hey, man, y'all need to get out of here. This is my gig.
Yep, that's right. They're in your neighborhood. They need to go somewhere else. I got
you. That's right.
So the shallow water fishing's been pretty good?
So overall this week, obviously we talked about the wind, Rick, and that mucks up the water. The same thing I've been talking about for a month and a half in my neck of the woods. But you know what? There's clean water out there. It's just we need some good tide. some lower winds to get this thing cleaned up, and then everything will be full speed from now. There's bait south of me. I don't know too much about what is up north of me. I'm guessing maybe up in Cape Costa. There's probably some bait on the beaches, white bait I'm talking about, which is what we all want because that's like a bowl of M&Ms around your house, Rick. I mean, you eat M&Ms, right? Like
who, me? Why never, young Gregory? That would be unhealthy.
So that's what we're looking for on that ballpark. The bait will show up soon. That will initially start the snook on the beaches, and then moving forward, the redfish, and everybody else is going to be good. The back bays this week was really about catching trout first, and then using cut baits on the shoreline and catching redfish and snook. We haven't had an awesome week, Rick, but we've made do with what we had. We had those tides where nothing happened for several hours, and then you had that magic window for an hour, hour and a half. So we were able to catch fish, but nothing was outstanding, if you want to put it that way, this week.
But I got to tell you, Greg, it's just that feeling that it's all in front of us. That's got me in such a good mood tonight. I mean, it's all in front of us. I'll be catching mahi next month. I'll be catching sailfish all summer. Even if I have a slow day now, it doesn't bother me as much. Right now we just got a few days of calm weather coming up, and that's the biggest thing we've needed to help our fishing.
Yeah, you're right there. And, the fact that I was able to put a tarpon in the air today was a really good sign. I'm not as blessed as Steve down south of me right now, where they're probably all stacked up and they won't go any further north because there's not a lot of bait and stuff to eat. But that'll all change in another week or two. And then guess what? It's full speed here in my neck of the woods. So, I'll tough it out for one more week. We'll do what we got to do, and then we'll move forward and just crush it.
You got it. Thanks so much, Cap. We always appreciate your report, and I look forward to hearing from you next week.
All right. Tight lines, Rick.
Captain Greg Stamper with a great report from Southwest Florida. But let's get a word from Shimano. There's one thing just about all our podcasters have in common. We rely on Shimano gear when the best day is on the line. Whether it's Jim Ross chasing a tarpon with a Saragusa spinner, Alan Sherman catching muttons on his bait runners, Shimano gear is everywhere in Florida. You see, Shimano builds a reel for every fish that swims, and it seems like every year they come out with a bunch of new models. You know what? They got names that it takes me 6 months to pronounce correctly, but there's also some Shimanos that have stood the test of time and stand at the top of the brand even today. If I'm fishing an inshore spinner, be it fresh or salt, you can count on the fact I'm throwing a Shimano Stratic. It's because it's been around the block and it just never fails. And if there's a blue water boat looking for a sea monster, I can almost promise you there's Shimano Tiagras pulling the big fish baits. Why do the best blue water guys count on Tiagras year after year? For the same reason I always throw a Stratic when I need to hook a redfish for my granddaughter. Because when the best day is on the line, you can count on the time-tested Tiagra and Stratic from Shimano. Our thanks to Greg Stamper for a great Southwest report. Time to move into West Central and find out everything West Central related from our main man, Ray Markham. How we doing, Cappy?
Fantastic.
Good. Things busting loose up there. It's springtime, Ray Markham.
Yes, sir. They sure are trying to, We had a few scattered kingfish start to show up. The wind started howling and they kind of disappeared. But the guys that got out just after the howling and fished some deep water wrecks and whatnot, they were catching them right and left out there. They were catching blackfin tuna and kingfish both. So all that tells me is that the fish aren't as stupid as some anglers might think they are, trying to catch them just off the shore when we've had a blow that's been blowing 25, 30 miles an hour.
Yep.
So,
they do not like stirred up water. That's the gospel.
No, sir, they don't.
Yep.
That 120-foot curve that we got going on out there that we've got grouper closure through the end of this month, it is pretty much, I don't know if the fish just know where it is, but it seems like even the red grouper go out to 125 feet.
I see. So hold on now. you've got a closure deeper than 120 feet and you're open inside of there?
Yes, sir.
That's strange. We don't ever do that on the East Coast, but I kind of like the way it sounds.
It's been that way for quite a long time, but the thing is that they find that these fish get out and spawn beyond 120 feet. So the red grouper, they leave them open on the inside of that, and a lot of guys that want to go out and catch a bunch of big mangoes or some vermilion lane or other snappers, they'll get out beyond the 120 foot to start their day, and then shoot back inside the 120 foot mark to do a few red grouper. But I think the thing that's going on is that because there are so many guys that are doing that, the keeper grouper inside the 120 feet are starting to get fewer and further between. So, it's just a matter of what's closed and what's open and what's being targeted. Inshore, it's a whole lot different. We've got our own issues with red tide being gone and just trying to recover from that. Right. And, the places that the red tide really didn't touch so much, the fishing is very good. I mean, it's off the charts. If you get up inside the Intercoastal Waterway from Clearwater north, guys are catching big snook, trout, redfish. If you get out along the beaches, there's still plenty of triple tail, occasional cobia. So you got to be ready for anything. And the guys that were doing the permit in nearshore wrecks, this is like sayonara when the wind blew. So I would imagine they probably went out with a kingfish and everything else out in deeper water. So that's great fishing.
They'll pop back up. Yep, they'll pop back up. Well, and this time of year, I'm okay with all this as much as I hate the wind because I know it gets better from here. We're right there at it, Ray. We're going to be
really, really, really close.
We're going to be in much better weather really soon.
Yes, sir. I'm a believer of that. Unfortunately, I'm looking at my Thursday trip might be a movable thing because we got some weather on the way again. So we shall see.
All right, buddy. Ray, thanks so much as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir. I hope you do.
Okay, you got it. We sure will. Captain Ray Markham from West Central, and we are going to head up into the Big Bend. But before we do, let's get a word from D.O.A. I recently had a chance to stop by D.O.A. World Headquarters in Stuart, Florida, and I was not the least bit surprised to see company founder Mark Nichols hard at work on a new fish-catching invention. What was shocking to me was he was working on the original D.O.A. shrimp, the same shrimp he patented in 1985. The stealthiest bait he ever made, the only bait that lands so subtly that spooky wintertime fish will never hear it, was getting Mark's full attention. "What are you doing?" was the obvious question. Mark looked at me sideways. "Hey, I've never stopped working on the shrimp. It's got to catch a lot more fish every year, so each one has to be better than the last one. So I've got all the production in-house now at D.O.A., and that means that today's 3 to 4 inch shrimp are consistently the best we've ever built. You know what? I get it now. The D.O.A. shrimp that fooled 1 million fish in 1985 has had to keep up with the times to keep making your fishing better. Hey, the water's still a little chilly and the fish are spooky. The 2022 version of the D.O.A. shrimp is the stealthiest, most lifelike, deadliest bait you can throw. Let's pull up into the Big Bend where it's always nice in Homosassa. That's because William Tony's the mayor. How are you, Mr. Mayor?
We're doing good to see the beautiful weather up here on the Big Bend and everything. And, Rick, speaking about cobia, so far here in the Homosassa area at the Homosassa River, I've seen one cobia come to the dock. Now, I've seen a couple kingfish from offshore that have started to come through. So we're still just cool enough that they're back down there in Ray Markham's neighborhood. So, we expect it to be kind of windy coming up this weekend, and that may, keep them just a hair south. But everything is about to break loose offshore for pelagics.
It won't be long. Won't be long at all. How are your trout biting, William?
Trout has been very good. Been catching plenty of those. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer. All our guides in our area here in Citrus County and all the way up the Big Bend, Steenahatchee and Keaton Beach have been doing really good on nice trout.
I think the new regs with letting that one fish, in the boat that's over 19, if you want to keep it, but I tell you what, as far as it's putting some fish in the boat, that's been good. Been getting a few triple tailmen showing up, so I just let you anglers know that if you're passing a crab buoy or maybe a stationary marker or even floating debris or anything like that, you want to double check, especially up there in Waukesasa Bay right now. They kind of prefer that little bit of darker water. I like catching with a live shrimp is always my favorite. Sometimes they'll hit a jig or a jerkbait, but if you really want to catch them, if it's a keeper size, 18 or over, you want to throw a live shrimp.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Anything else going on?
Well, we're still getting plenty of redfish. It seems that gold spoons have been the ticket. So if you were down south of the Homosassa River in Chesapeake area, all the rocky points on the incoming tide, a Eppinger Rex gold spoon or even the old Johnson gold spoon has been doing the trick. Been using a 1/4 ounce. If you use anything heavier than that in our area, you're more likely going to be reeling fast enough to keep it off the rocks. The 1/4 ounce, or even if you can find a 1/8 ounce, will give you a little bit more freedom to try to let it fall or work it just a hair slower to give it more flash. But, don't be surprised if a snook hits it also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That sounds perfect. Well, it won't be long until things improve even more and this wind backs off. We can get some clear water and a little bit offshore fishing better. William,
right.
We always appreciate.
I was just going to say real quick, Rick, that's what I was saying. Hopefully, we're looking at high winds this weekend and everything. So hopefully next week will be the time where, I can give you a little bit more on that offshore report. We get those Cobia coming up our way.
William, we can smell it. It's almost here. We can smell it. It's so close.
Absolutely.
As mayor of Homosassa, I feel like you're obligated to tell me, are there any open containers laws being violated in Homosassa this evening?
Not really. Most everybody, if they're walking, they're okay. In fact, if you want to be here on the weekends, that could be the crazy part. But start Monday through Friday, right now, you can pretty much, I don't know. We hear a lot of songbirds. There's a lot of wind. No boom boxes, no bands playing. It's actually pretty nice down here right now.
I like it. I want to be there myself. Thank you, William. We appreciate it. Our thanks to William Toney for a great Big Bend report. Now, we can't get out of Florida until we go out the Panhandle and check in one Tyler Massey. Tyler, how we doing?
We're doing good, Rick. How are you guys?
Outstanding, buddy. Tell me what's going on in the Panhandle.
Yeah, so, fishing's still, picking up. Everything's moving into our springtime patterns, and all around, inshore and offshore, stuff's getting pretty good. Nothing, blue water fishing yet, but bottom fishing's been really good. So starting off inshore, we still got our sheepheads still hanging around our path. Not as hot and heavy as it was a couple of days ago, but still plenty to catch. Using live shrimp when they're available. Sand fleas and fiddler crabs are also other good bait options for those fishing around our rock jetties and stuff in the path. Also, redfish are in the Santa Rosa Sound. Pitching around boat docks with live shrimp has been best for that. Mostly, we like to fish the docks that are a little bit deeper, more shade-covered docks, so those seem to be more productive for me. Another, awesome inshore fish is Spanish mackerel showed up this week too. So just, all around a lot of stuff to catch.
They've been due. I'm glad to hear they showed up. That's an outstanding report. All right. Well, when does your blue water fishing start, Tyler?
We don't really see too much until we get into, late April, May.
Mm-hmm.
People start, making the trips out there, picking up, dolphin and our blackfin tunas. Still a few wahoos around, but people will start fishing those spads I've talked about, in the next couple of weeks. As long as it's calm weather, people are heading out there, catching a few dolphin, a few, wahoos, and a couple shots at billfish. So,
gotcha.
Whenever the weather warms up a little bit, we'll be, be plenty of guys focusing on that.
Now, you just don't get the great historic Cobia runs you used to anymore, do you?
No, we just don't, and it's something I grew up doing, and I love Cobia fishing. But here we are almost April, and there hasn't been a fish caught. yet, and only maybe one or two seen off of a pier yet this year. So it's just, who knows what to say. We, in years past, we've been catching, 10 fish a day in, mid, late March. So, I just don't know if maybe they'll trickle through later on, or maybe there's not many more coming. It's just, it hasn't been good last few years for sure.
Yeah, Tyler, we started off tonight's broadcast with a fisheries biologist from University of Miami, graduated from there and did his graduate work there. And he says that Miami can raise 100,000 cobia in about 45 days, and that they cost about $1 a piece, and they ship them over to Panama, and they grow them up to aquaculture size and sell them. Well, I got to tell you, buddy, I'm in for a couple dozen. How about you?
Yeah, no doubt. I'll put them in a pond or something. We'll keep them going.
We'll raise our own. There ain't no doubt. Hey, Tyler, we appreciate it so much. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, Rick, we'll be here. We'll see you.
Okay, thank you. Captain Tyler Massey brings our Action Spotter reports to a conclude this evening. It's been a lot of fun. Man, did I ever enjoy, am I ever fired up about talking with Scott Meyer, the biologist from the University of Miami, telling us that they raise cobia and sell them to Panama, $1 a piece. How about that? Wouldn't you think that a bunch of us could get together and maybe help? Hey, it's what the trout fishermen had to do. When I was a kid, they were catching native trout. Now they're still catching trout. Why? They grow their own. Well, I'm for it. Let's see if we can get a movement started. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed tonight's Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Report. It's certainly my pleasure to bring it to you. But listen, I need your input. If you like what you hear, you don't like what you hear, you got some suggestions, you got somebody you want to talk to or you want to hear from about the pressing issues of the day. I know this much. I don't want the University of Miami spending any more time raising red snapper like they were doing many years ago. We got that covered. Now let's work on some other species that we could raise and maybe enhance our wild stocks of fish to the point where we took some of the pressure off of them. That'd be a lot of fun. So email me at rick@floridasportsman.com and let me know what you'd like to see added to the podcast. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles. God bless, and we will see you on a good rip soon.